Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Music and Mixing. I'm DJ Michael Joseph. I do not have the deck set up tonight because I have a special guest tonight. I would like to introduce you guys to a very long-time friend of mine, great DJ, and a person who's been in the business and kind of experienced a lot of it for his whole life, a lot longer stories than I can tell. So if you think I have stories, this guy has stories galore. Welcome to the show, DJ John Hohman from Metro Mix.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so John and I, like I said, we've known each other. I want to tell the history of knowing you because I knew you before I knew you. No, because it was John had his whole life he's had radio shows. Still has stuff that's on radio shows around the country all the time now, still to this day. But back then he had a radio show on a local radio station, and it was the only place you could hear this music in like the late 80s. Or he started before that, but for me, I got introduced to him with the radio show, and we would tape his shows off the radio so that we could listen to that music the rest of the week, because there was no place you could really hear a mix set like that. Aside from like going to a club, there was no radio stations that played that on the regular. There's obviously no internet. So I was a big fan of John Hohman and Metro Mix starting in the late 80s, and then started going to the clubs when I hit 21, and we would always find out where Metro Mix was going to be, and we'd always go to those clubs. And believe it or not, and I have to say this, we would always ask, is it John or one of his cronies? Because we knew John was, like, I'm not saying the other guys weren't any good, but it was John we wanted to go see. And later on in life, 10 years later, he was DJing at a club that I used to like to go to because it was all electronic, and him and I got to be friends. And he knew that I spun a little bit and asked me if I wanted to come and work for his company at a new place that was opening. And then I became one of his cronies and got to spin. And I learned a lot of my blending techniques from him. And I really, still to this day, I have people that like, I mean, they're like, man, you just blend those songs. And it was stuff he taught me from the very beginning. You know, before there were effects units, you had to do everything with the knobs that were there. High, low, mid was about it. There wasn't cue points at that time. There wasn't anything. And I think that put a good foundation under me to build off of, and I'm very thankful for that. So, but yeah, I was a fan of John's before John and I were friends, and then since then we've remained friends and running into each other at the expo and DJ places together sometimes and all kinds of stuff like that. But when we did our show on Monday night about how does the early video games make you a better DJ, I thought, well, I want to talk about the software, because I talked a lot about my Commodore VIC-20 and some of the early softwares I used, like studio software stuff in the 90s that I got. I brought one out that it came on a floppy disk, and I paid like $300 for just a multi-channel thing back then. And I thought, well, I want to talk about the DJ software side of it. And I know through talking to John, he had his hands in some of the early days of the programs, testing and all kinds of stuff, and we're going to get into that. But I want to start out with this because you and I were talking about this the other day. When people ask you, John, how long have you been DJing? And you tell them in their reaction. So how long have you been DJing?
Since 1977.
77. So that was America was 201 years old then.
Yes.
So you were like legitimately playing disco back then. It wasn't like, oh man, I played disco. No, you were legitimately doing it, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
It was all records.
And it was all records. I was in a record pool called the Greater Pittsburgh Record Pool, GPRP. Brian Harkins was the guy that ran it, and another guy, Rich Hernandez. Yeah.
Someday we'll have to have a show just talking about what an actual record pool was back then, because it's so different than what you think of now. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
so, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. So you've been doing that for the 70s. You had radio shows. Obviously, we talked about that. You still do.
My radio first started in I did a small show on KITS in San Francisco. That was my first on-air thing. That was 1982.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's just to think about that. I mean, because the other day I was talking about on Virtual DJ, it captures your history of what you've played. And I was looking at the fact that I have 10 years of Virtual DJ play history. And I'm like, oh, man. But, I mean, you've seen through so many different formats of DJing. It's not even funny.
Actually was like some of the clubs in the early days, in the transition between like 79, 78, 79, 80. You know, the SL1200 turntable was just starting to kick in, and guys were just starting to get hip to it, you know, and some of the places you would play, they didn't have pitch control on turntables. I mean, there was a place called Zelda's Greenhouse. I can remember I filled in for one guy, and I don't know if it was Chuck Lewis or one of these guys early on, and they had a platter. You had to lift the platter to change the belt, and it was a belt-driven turntable. There was two of them with wooden tone arms. I don't know who made them. I'm not sure.
Tell them what the belt switching was all about.
Well, you had to lift the platter up. There was different size wheels. You changed the belt on the actual wheel, to change the speed to play a 45 or a 12 inch. And there were more 45s than there were 12 inches then.
That's what I wanted to tell them, that it wasn't a flip of a switch.
No. There was no such thing as a flip. No, that didn't happen until later.
Yeah.
You started seeing that actually progress in the home units more than you did the DJ units. DJ units kind of happened by accident. That was the direct drive. The SL1200, when it came out, it was like a godsend. The clouds opened. Oh my, because it really had the torque that most other turntables didn't, especially belt-driven turntables.
Right. Yeah.
So dealing with that,
the reliability of it to last you years.
Yeah. And then learning how to carry records and crates of records, and that's the
thing that people like, today complaining about, music costs this much to buy it from places. And I'm like, y'all don't even know. Because there are days where we used to go to the store, dig for hours and come up with like 5 songs.
Yep.
Where today you could spend 5 minutes and come out with 100 songs,
And if you were getting promoted by record labels like I was because of the shows,
you would send some crap.
You would get like 100 cuts a week that you had to go through and listen to, and
a lot of crap, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a lot of, and then you were testing records, and so you were carrying 4 to 5 crates of records a night. Yeah.
Wow.
And most clubs had their own turntables. Most DJs brought their own music. As the years progressed, then it changed. Right. Some clubs had their own styles of music that you had to play. Depending on where you were playing. Yeah. So after turntables, reel-to-reel tape became, because there weren't any mixes. So you wanted to create your own mixes. So
that's right.
Using a tape and a razor blade, which I thought I had.
I have one of those. I have one of those.
Here's my original. This is my original editing block back from 1982.
I have one of those upstairs too.
So you were able to use pitch control on the reel-to-reel decks. TIAC made reel-to-reel decks and you were able to mix into another song with the reel-to-reel. So that was another tool.
Yeah.
Then came video decks, 3/4 inch video decks. At first they had no pitch control, so you were trying to match it to the song, or eventually they came out with pitch control on the video decks. And there were some clubs that I did that in. Then came CDs.
That's where I want to start a little bit there, because I think the CDs became an era of a different mindset to DJing, where we're going to go into the software, to where it kind of changed the mindset of how people got their hands on music a little bit, I think. Especially once they were to be able to burn their own music.
Yes. Yeah, well, that came a little bit later. The burning of their own music came later. That was in the LimeWire and Napster years.
Yep, that was really the late 90s, yeah.
Yeah, you saw a lot of that going on because, burning discs was an easy thing to do, and technology was there.
Right.
Before that, it was, the promo onlys, and a lot of guys were getting it. Plus, if you were a known DJ, you were getting slews of CDs.
More stuff sent to you, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it went back and forth. It depended on where you were spinning, and what sometimes the type of equipment they had there. If they had CD players and you weren't no vinyl, you were playing CDs, you better have it. Because they didn't let you like walk in with your turntables back then. It didn't happen that way. Everything was hardwired in, and you weren't allowed to touch anything most of the time. But CDs, that jump from vinyl to CD was a big, oh my, how are we gonna do this? And I told you the story about being in LA at a DJ Times music convention, and there was a bunch of guys, we were all on panels, and
Yeah,
where
this
we
is the
step
story
up.
I want you to tell me about this. That back then, like I said, the whole mindset, because we still see that mindset now, but it was about a different thing, and I see as it carries. So tell a story. You're out in Los Angeles?
It was in Los Angeles, yeah.
On a panel with other music people.
And I'm not going to say who they are.
Not gonna
Most of them are very popular now.
they are, you would consider them absolute 100% pop artist, right?
No, most of them are popular DJs now.
DJs. Okay, I thought there was a couple artists on there.
No, all DJs.
Okay.
They're all DJs. So, I brought up the fact, they were complaining about going vinyl to CD. And there's no way we're going to do this, because the technology wasn't there yet. So they didn't want to embrace it. They wanted to stay with vinyl at the time. And I said, guys, just hang on, because you're going to be playing on a laptop or a computer someday. And this was 1985, probably 86, somewhere around in there. And they threw stuff at me and said, boo, there's no way. And here we are playing off a laptop. Yeah. And,
There was someone that we know. We'll talk about that later. But first, I'm jumping way ahead here to the controllers. But that's why I wanted you to tell that story, because each transition into something else, you get that same mentality.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about some stuff later. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's really not embracing technology is the thing. No matter what, you've always got to be. And in Metro Mix, myself and my partner Harris, we've always been hungry for the next thing, or trying to find out what that next thing's going to be. That's what was so good about DJ Expo, because you were always getting exposed to the next thing.
Right.
Which kind of like spins me off into, okay, how software started. So,
I want to keep on that mentality, because we're talking about equipment switching. We had a friend, and we can talk about who it was later. As soon as I say this, you'll know who it is. But they said they were talking about CDJs, okay? And they said, the first time I ever see one of those in a club will be the last time I DJ.
Yeah.
And they DJ with them now. So,
of course, yeah.
I remember them saying that, and I'm like, really? The first time you see them in a club will be the last time you DJ? I'm like, okay.
Either that or quit, or don't play at that club. Or, again, the technology always tends to drive the DJ in a sense, If it changes so much and people will adapt to that change, then you've got to adapt to that change. Yeah. I mean, that's how it goes. That's how it's always been.
Yeah. So switching to the CDs, that was a commitment for a lot of people.
A lot.
They jumped in head first, and you had a lot of DJs that never owned a record collection in that sense. They just owned a CD collection.
Right.
So that goes through the years of that. Is there anything we need to say about that before we take a look at software?
The CD technology took a while to catch up to actually feeling like you were spinning SL1200s. That took time, because in the beginning, most guys were using controllers, this is not a CD controller. This is an MP3 controller, but I have a
story to tell about that.
Yeah, this type of thing. Yeah, we'll tell a story about that later.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. So before that panel, you said that how much information, concept, or exposure did you have to people developing computer programs for playing music?
None. And in regards to DJing, none. Where I got that information from in my mind was the things have been changing on the production front.
Right.
In the beginning, I was doing everything in the production front, analog, tape, cutting. Then it became multiple tracks of analog. Then it became digital boards. Then it became digital software. It was like 2 tracks, a left and right track, to being able to edit in a computer. And I said, okay, eventually you're going to be able to DJ from this. And that's how long, like in my mind, I was thinking that's where it was going to eventually go. So that's how long ago that was.
Yeah, because the software that I had, I told you that it came on a floppy disk. That was 95.
Yeah.
So that was, prior to, that was still the CD era, so it wasn't even close. And you saw that, and you saw a future in that probably very few people really saw, I'm guessing, at that time.
Yeah, it was funny. I knew it was going to be out there, but what really brought it close was VisioSonic for me.
Okay.
When Harris and I were at the convention, we met Joe Van Jerry.
What year was that?
96, 97, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And he had this little card table set up. He was pretty much by himself, and there was no one paying attention to him. And we went over and we talked to him, and he said, I have got this concept, spinning from the laptop. I'm like, okay. Joe is the kind of guy we want to get involved with. Right. So we ended up hooking up with him and going down to Clearwater, Florida, and that's where VisioSonic was from, and meeting Joe and his team. And I mean, these guys were way forward thinkers. These were programmers, code writers. I mean, some of them were DJs and code writers. They were doing things 20 years ago that are happening now. Like they were putting on a radio show, and I mean, with MP3s and streaming it online. I'm like, what are these guys doing? I mean, it was like I walked into a whole new universe.
Right.
And so, getting involved with them was like, they were asking questions, and how, Jorgen especially, how do you feel like how this feels? And they would change things within the software, within code writing. And then also a big part of what happened then was I became more the poster child for the product whenever there weren't poster childs for any products. Right. That didn't really exist yet within what we see now. I mean, every DJ is getting a sponsorship for,
even if they aren't, they say they are.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was doing little shows and tours and things with VisioSonic. And I found out that Nile Rodgers was an investor in VisioSonic.
Nile Rodgers. For people who don't know who Nile Rodgers is, go ahead.
Now, Nile Rodgers is a famous producer, songwriter. He wrote everything from We Are Family to all the Chic stuff. He was in Chic, like La Freak, all that stuff.
Now Daft Punk.
And Daft Punk. He did Madonna's Into the Groove. He did all kinds of stuff. He did Let's Dance for David Bowie. I mean, mega producer, talented as hell, super nice guy.
Great musician too.
Yes. So I knew him and did work with him before VisioSonic with a guy named Tom Causey out of Pittsburgh, who was a record producer. Tom was like a big promoter for music in New York on RCA. He did all kinds of stuff, Tom. So Niall and I hooked up earlier with a little label that he was opening called Ear Candy Records. So I had some already development, relationship with him. But when we got into VisioSonic again, it was like, oh, how are you? So he got through VisioSonic guys, Joe, and then he connected us up with Niall again. And Niall had me do string parts and horn sections for Chic. I was part of the Chic band. So it wasn't just the Chic music though. Niall was so connected. We did stuff for like Howard Hewitt, Shaka Khan, Dougie Fresh, Duran Duran at the Roseland. I was on stage with these guys playing parts that he would give me to play.
Digital
through this unit with the PC DJ software with another part of this called Space Opera. So this is I have the Space Opera. It's too hard to assemble, but this is the actual controller that I used in my final show, which was VH1 Divas 2000, the 2000 VH1 with Diana Ross, Mariah Carey, Faith Hill, and Donna Summer and Destiny's Child. I actually was on stage with them performing off of this, doing all the parts. The biggest thrill I had was working with Donna Summer. I mean, she was absolutely, it was a dream come true.
I was in his house around Christmas time. You had a Christmas card from her, didn't you?
Yeah, well, that was years ago. She's dead now.
No, I'm not. No, yeah.
Diana Ross. Yes, yeah. Diana Ross.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I want to take a couple seconds here and talk about that thing you held in your hands.
Yeah.
Because it was about that time. I want to go in a minute here, and I want to go through a quick dance of all the software history before we talk a little bit about that. But it was around 2001. It had to been after the Divas tour. You're back in Pittsburgh. I started, following you. You asked me to come to the studio, and if I want to be part of the Metro Mix crew and all that. And one day he says, "Hey, when you get a chance, stop up the studio. I want you to test something." And I was presuming at that time was like, you wanted me to hear a new song, see what I thought of it, you're working on. And he takes me down to the basement studio, and there's a laptop sitting there and that controller, and he's like, test this out. And I'm like, what is it? Where do you put the CDs or something like that? I said. He's like, no, it's all MP3s. And I'm like, for real? He's like, yeah, just play with it. Just sit there for however long and play with it. And I was playing with it, and I was like, I don't like this thing, man. And it turned me off of computer DJing for so long that I didn't start DJing with computers until my first time in public on a laptop was 2010. Okay, so I went from CDs to Denon had those two 1200 players that took thumb drives. So I would put the little thumb drives in there, and you could see a screen about that big with 3 songs. And I did that until I finally said, okay, I got to make this move to a computer because I'm feeling really left behind. And now they're switching over to the thumb drives, but totally different screen. So John gave me a hand in on that in 2001, and I rejected it. And to this day, of a person that me in virtual and how much I love to tweak and play with that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I could have been doing that all along, but I was just a little too hard-nosed.
You weren't ready yet.
Yeah, I was younger, but that's still not all that much younger.
Yeah, you just weren't ready. You weren't.
Yeah. But it was there, and I remember even seeing you spin with it on down at Rock Jungle. And stuff like that. That it was just like, wow, that's MP3s like on my computer at home and stuff like that. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit.
I want to just say one thing. The goal of that, and what was so exciting for me, was not having to carry 5 crates of records anymore. I mean, that was really it, because I really never was a CD DJ a lot. I did it, but not being able to carry 5 crates of record was a dream come true. However, in the very beginning, they didn't have it on a laptop. It was on a regular giant computer at the time.
A tower.
Thank you. Yeah, and we had to carry that around. And the fun thing was being able to perform all over the place with it. From Miami to New York, did stuff all over the place, and then went overseas with it and did stuff over there. It was fascinating, and people were just thrilled and couldn't understand in the beginning, like, what was going on with this? Where's the vinyl, or where's the CDs? It wasn't there. So
where do you put
hats off to VisioSonic, because those guys were just really, really innovative, creative.
All right, so VisioSonic became their product became PC DJ, right?
They are the company that owned PC DJ, and they came out with other products too. Like they still have. I know that they have karaoke and different things now.
Their new one's called. Oh, I just looked at it the other day. I can't think. Is someone in the chat shout out what the new program's called? Something, and I can't think of it. What it's called, but they did in '99 was their first showing of that in '99, and in 2002 they made one called Digital 1200 SL.
Yeah,
because they were trying to get the guys who were spinning on the 1200 SL turntables to kind of feel more comfortable with that. But as we looked a little bit on this, I tried to look at the whole history of it. And one of the things that I want to set in stone right now is that everyone talks about Serato was the starter, Serato was the beginning. That is not true.
No, it's
Serato wasn't even close to the beginning. They do a good product. I'm not going to argue with that. I love Virtual, but they weren't even close, because one of the earliest ones that we could find, John and John Young, all of us, all 3 of us, we think it was 97 with DJ Power. They showed it for the first time. Well, they put it together in 97 and then showed it in Las Vegas in 98, right?
Right.
Yeah, 98. Yeah, I'm trying to think my years there. I was going to say 88 there for a second. But also around that time, there was one that was made for a computer. Again, I don't think that one had a controller to it like PC DJ. So we're talking about something that only worked on a computer, no connections, was Virtual Turntable, or VTT, by Carrot Innovations.
Yeah, that was the earliest thing that I remember.
Yeah. Nothing.
He gave me a copy of it, and I tried it, and it just wasn't up to snuff.
Different.
It wasn't up to snuff yet. It wasn't. It's still like it was really loose, and it wasn't right. The actual time code and the computer was not catching up yet. It wasn't fast enough computer.
That was part of it, yeah, because you didn't back then to have even like enough memory to hold a bunch of songs was a whole other thing. But that was kind of the first one. So you talk about that was where a lot of it began. PC DJ was there at the beginning, like I said, around 2000. Serato says that it started in Dex. That's what it's called. PC DJ version 3 is called Dex.
Dex, yeah.
That's what it was. I couldn't remember it. Thank you, Daniel, in the chat room. And thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I appreciate all you guys. If you don't know, if you just tuned in, this is John Hohman, a longtime friend of mine, DJ. We're talking about computer software, and because he has had his hand in some of the beginning areas of it and can tell us history. And I love when he drops names, because when you talk to him, he won't talk about being on tour with the divas and Nile Rodgers and all this. It's nothing. I'm working on this new record. You should hear this new. It's all about him and I have this thing. Just let's move on to the next thing. I did that already. Let's move on to the next thing. So it was nice to hear you acknowledge some of that stuff. But Serato said that they come out in '99. But what they did was that two of the guys who founded the company came out with a software that allowed you to pitch up and down music or a file and not lose the tone of it, not lose the speed of it.
Right.
So they had that in '99. And then it took them all the way till 2004 before they had a DJ software that was released with Rain called Scratch Live. And you could only use it with the SL boxes. You could not spin on, without it. There was no controllers. There was nothing. They didn't come out with controller DJ. Keep this in mind. Software that worked with anything other than SL until 2008. Okay, so what we have in our hands today, they didn't jump into that market until 2008. 2011 was Scratch DJ Intro. 2013 was Scratch DJ. Serato DJ, not Scratch DJ. Sorry, Serato DJ. 2018 became Serato DJ Pro and Serato DJ Lite. And then just last year, they brought in the ability to play music out of the speakers that the program was playing in. They didn't even have that before. So to me, they're a great, solid program. I have nothing against them, but when people say, "Oh, they were the innovator," they kind of innovated a little bit with the DVS, but they weren't even the first with the DVS. For those of you who know what DVS is, that's the time code vinyl and stuff like that plays that. Because Traktor had that in what year did I say they had that? 2003. They came out with Final Scratch DVS. So they were in there first. And John, you said you thought there was another one that did DVS before that, or was?
Oh yeah. There was a guy that was the guy early on who had DVS. He was trying to sell the concept before that was the first time I ever saw it. That was in like '97.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what is that? And it was connected to his own software that he wrote.
Right.
And it had no name at the time. He was just a time code geek engineer guy that had a table,
Which if you look online, there are videos online that talk about time code and how it was originally done with random noise and virtually random noise, they call it, and all this stuff. It was kind of neat. But like I said, those were the early ones. Traktor had it 2003. Traktor's first program was in 2000, so we're still going back. They had Traktor DJ and Traktor Studio, and then they combined them in 2002. So we're still talking way early in it with Traktor DJ Studio 2, but they just mixed the two together on that. AutoMix, which is Virtual DJ, came out with a program called AutoMix in 2000. AutoMix MP3 is the actual name of it. And then they renamed it in 2003. So since 2000, they have had a DJ software.
Yeah, I remember them being like very competitive with PC DJ at the time.
Yeah.
Like Virtual was there. They've been there a long time. They were there actually before Serato.
Yeah, that was why I wanted to point all that out, that there were lots of people. I'm not saying Serato doesn't deserve credit, because they perfected the DVS thing, I think, really well. But they had to put their own hardware to it to make it work at that time, because again, computers weren't there. They made their own hardware that really made it work well. Yeah. So, all right, so we're with PC DJ. In your years of DJing with that, you toured and all these different things.
Yeah.
Where did you see the advances in the software along the way, where it could do something like the next version could do something that kind of stood out to you and said, "Oh, we can do this now"? Like the first time was maybe someone released a controller, or the first time you did try one of the DVSs that did work, something like that.
Right.
Along the ways, what sticks out for you?
Well, I remember in the very beginning with PC DJ, we were using it off a keyboard. It was just key commands.
Oh wow, MIDI.
There wasn't even a controller They were still building the controller.
Yeah. Hercules made the first controller, and I can't remember what year. Someone feel free to look it up.
Yeah, I remember Jorgen then giving me a MIDI map little like button pusher thing, and I used that.
Yeah.
At first.
Triggers.
And then I was like, Jorgen, we got to come on, when are you coming out with a controller? And then they worked really, really hard on it, and they came out with a controller. And at the same time, they were working on, which is, when you talk about Serato with turntables, it's still time code. Like that little record they give you is time code. They were just trying to perfect the speed of how time code and the computer interact with each other because they weren't fast enough processors.
Right.
So they were all struggling with that. But that was the first step, was seeing them jump from MIDI commands on the keyboard to actual controller itself. And then I think maybe 2 years later, they went into turntables. They got it to work with turntables. And of course, then, it was more doodads and buttons and things and extra stuff, like search mechanisms were real basic then. It wasn't now it's like mind boggling how much you can search. And, you of course are an expert at organizing 8 million different MP3s. Back then we were lucky if we could tag our MP3 properly. It was pretty basic.
I remember trying to get the CDs to tag proper when you would burn your CDs, try to tag them properly so the machine read them properly with the names and all that kind of stuff in there.
Then also what you were seeing too was, desktop to laptop. And laptops were getting faster and faster and faster. Because I remember in the very beginning, from wedding DJs to, bar mitzvah DJs to club DJs, were all afraid of the crash. The crash was a big thing. Everybody was totally afraid of it. And I got to admit, the stuff used to crash, But hey, when the Wright brothers flew their airplane, they crashed too several times before, that's how it was, so you had to take chances. And we have always at Metrobix been chance takers when it comes to software. So
you took one on me, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Is there any other softwares over the years that have jumped out at you that I like this? Because I know recently I got you to try Virtual, and some different things along the ways that because I remember, like you said, that you were out on tour back then with just that little controller and stuff. And as you developed into clubs and getting DJs to work with you, like when I first started working with you, it was a lot of CDs back then because the club that we were at, like you said, they put their hardware in and you were not allowed to bring your own in at all.
That's correct.
So you kind of had to deal with that. But what other softwares along the way that you've really liked that said, I like this, or something even that maybe came up and then just disappeared?
Well, Virtual is actually one that, I had bought it early on. And it all seems similar to me. So I just went with what I was comfortable with. Back then it was PC DJ, then Serato, then Virtual. I jumped back and forth. I also have Tractor. I have them all. And I found that Virtual was way more flexible in the things that it can do to make your life easier. And now you can play videos, and back then you couldn't play videos. That didn't even exist.
Yeah, can we talk a second about you spinning videos off of DVDs? Because one day he said, come up to the studio. And I walk in the front room of the studio, and he's got these giant Pioneer CD players. And I'm like, what are these? These are huge.
I actually still have that.
You still have them?
I still have that unit, yeah.
And they weren't CD players. They were DVD. And you could have DVDs of music and scratch and do everything with video. And
they're called DVJs. They're called DVJs, yeah. They look like the CDJs.
Yeah, they look just like the CDJs, but a little bit bigger, a little bit heftier. And that was about 2000, 2001 maybe?
Yeah. That was another piece of technology that was because, everybody was getting into music video mixing, And that was the only unit that could do it.
Could do that, that's right.
And I was like, when are they going to do it with the software? So, and of course, here we go. Now everybody can do it with the software. And, like the way you perform, you can intermix music with background loops to to music videos to, I mean, it's all
commercials for the
it's all coming together. It's crazy how it really has all come together, and different people use different kind of controllers for different
it's right yeah
reasons.
The full circle for me is when they added the ability to control lighting with that. To where you, as before, if you wanted to do a major show with lighting, video, DJing, everything, you had to have a team running the lights, all the whole 9 yards, video. Now one person can come in with one laptop and have everything unified and look really super professional.
Yeah, that was a vision or a dream of mine, is to be able to have that all happen at the same time.
Right.
And now it's here.
Now it's here. And that took how many years from when you wished?
When I started really messing around with the software in the beginning, I was like, "Hey guys, why can't we?" And they're like, "Yeah, good idea. Someday, you know."
Right. So that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look into the future 20 years, because that's one of the things that I kind of, you had the vision back then that I didn't. So even when you put it in my hands, I didn't have the vision. I just think that's so funny that I had that, tested it, and like what I am now with programs, and how much I love just tweaking with it and playing with it.
Right.
That it wasn't there, back then. But in 20 years, where do you see all this going? Because we have in our midst right now standalones that don't even need a laptop. We have online music as opposed to having your own, what we would call a physical library, even though they're still digital files. You don't have a physical library. You have automated mixing, both on the radio live, because a lot of people don't realize how many radio shows don't involve an actual person. It involves a voice recorded with thing mixing, So all of that going into the future, 20 years from now, 2041, what do you think a young DJ getting into the business is probably, or maybe even what you wish would happen? Something like that. That's a big question, I know.
Yeah. I think, again, it's going to be along the lines of developing that connection between the cloud and the actual performance piece more. Again, right now it's like, oh, sometimes the internet could go down, and what happens if it crashes? Well, they're going to have probably a system set up where it's not going to crash, and it may not be through the internet anymore. It may be through their proprietary, system. Like, let's use Pioneer. Maybe Pioneer has their own system where you buy the software and the hardware together. It's all one package, and you're classified as blah DJ, so you get blah package, which has music that's promoted by record companies to that portal.
Right. That's deep right there. Holy crap. I didn't even think about that. Also, would you say that it's probably all going to be rental in the future, like a subscription service, or do you think you're still going to be able to buy?
I think what will end up happening is, again, those who are the trendsetters that go to the top are going to get the portal for nothing because they're already making noise in their marketplace. And then, the more influential guys. And then the ones that aren't as many, maybe they pay a subscription every month,
right,
or every year. And just like now, but it'll be more of a controlled situation, right. And you've got to be accepted into that system,
right?
Because I look at it from the other end, which is the promoter and the DJ who does remixes. Like, I do a lot of remix work, and if your remixes get onto that service, maybe guys want to get to that service, and that's the only place they can get it. All that kind of stuff that's promotion oriented,
right?
But, I see. That's where it's going to go. Like, it's almost there now, but it's not as it's not as developed as it could be.
Software and hardware, you're thinking will be as it took it in the past, it'll take that in the future for even the Wi-Fi and the 5G, etc. type stuff.
Yeah, you're going to be not. There's not. It's all going to be in a unit, and you're going to be pulling it off of something that's related to the internet somehow, but it'll be a private place that you're pulling it from.
Right. That would be interesting to be like brand. So you're a Pioneer DJ or a Denon DJ or a Rain DJ, and by buying their equipment, you get a a beginner level subscription to their streaming service, and you could pay a little bit more to get the remix section of the streaming service, et cetera, so on and so forth.
And then if you create remixes or whatever, they go into the
That pool.
Den-on pool.
Yeah. That beginning, and this is the only thing that I kind of look at and go, because if you look at the music market right now in the streaming world, you can get pretty much anything from like Spotify or Deezer or Tidal or one of those.
Yes.
But in the video world, if you want some Disney stuff, you have to go to Disney. If you want HBO, you have to go to HBO. There really isn't one. The closest one would be Netflix to get you a little bit of everything. And that's the thing that I think maybe worries me, is that there will be too much of a... I mean, I guess it's good to have a war going on, but I would like to see a central service that would get you all of the other ones, maybe. Hopefully. Because otherwise you'd have to pay for two, Well, kind of like us paying for multiple services right now for our downloads and different things. Because I pay for a download service. I have a lifetime subscription to another one. Monthly, lifetime subscription I already paid for. And then my online stuff for streaming that I have. So basically I'm putting 3 out for my music library each year.
Yeah.
So
if the bigger companies were able to, harness the capabilities of creating that own site of their own, and actually having somebody who mans that pulls in all that really good music and makes the deals with the labels, and that would be tremendous. Then it's a full package and it's not being sent out to the third party.
Right. All right, so we have a little bit of time left. I'm going to ask John a question, but while I'm asking him that, if you have any questions for him, put them in the chat right now, and we will ask him. I'm watching the chat, John, so I'll throw them at you. But go ahead and put those in there. While they're doing that, I want to ask you, with all of this that we've talked about tonight, looking back, way back, to flipping rubber bands on turntables, to today walking out of your house with a laptop and being able to go to a place that has machinery already set up and just play. What do you enjoy the most? Because back then, I know in the record days, everybody said the worst was carrying all the records. What's some of the best on over the years that you've really enjoyed part of it? And that can be music scenes or anything. What did you enjoy the most? And what was like, I'm glad this changed sort of thing? Give me your best of all the years, and not worst, but, goodbye. Let's keep moving forward.
Yeah, let's keep moving forward. Well, in the early years, of course, everybody hears this, there were super clubs. Super clubs, you were playing 5-6 nights a week, and you were playing to 2,000 or 3,000 people, and there were several of those places in one market. Like the VIPs, for example, there was 5 of them in Pittsburgh, all cranking at the same time.
Yeah.
So again, it was an era of partying. People, it was right out of the Vietnam War. People wanted to love and party and get close, and the music was built for that, and the DJs were exposing that music. It was a very different time, and people loved extended mixes that went on for 10 minutes, so there was nothing like that, in regards to
being in that
my experience. Like I think back at Heaven and playing in places like that. I mean, it was just tremendous to see that amount of people respond to music. It was like, whoa. And you really weren't the highlight of the party. You were up in a corner somewhere. Which I kind of liked that. It was like you did your thing. People knew who you were that loved the music. But later on, when it became digital, the highlight of my career was VH1, Madison Square Garden, live on stage, performing with digital software with legends like Donna Summer, Diana Ross, Nile Rodgers. I'm on stage, part of the band, looking at a crowd of people going, oh my God, what am I doing here? It was one of those kind of moments.
Right.
And there was a lot of people that made that happen. Joe Van Jerry, Nile Rodgers, Harris, there was a lot of people, but it was a tremendous thing, a highlight in my career.
Right.
Most definitely.
I can understand, before we go to the worst, I can understand the part about the people in the dance floor, because I heard a young DJ just last year in 2020 talk about he wished he would have been around in the 90s, DJing in the 90s. And I'm like, why? He goes, because people danced then. People got out, and it was all about dancing and fun. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, the whole mindset, for those young DJs who are watching, the mindset in the 90s was so different than now, and people got out to dance. In the 70s was way more than that.
Way more.
But it's so different than now, to where dancing meant something. Now it's just an afterthought of bottle service.
Yeah. Well, 70s and 80s was definitely more of a dancing thing. When you went into the 90s is when it changed. The tempo was lower. It wasn't as energetic.
Well, we had Hammer in that era.
Yeah.
So the Lisa and Cult Jam. We had the freestyle. It was the end of the freestyle era.
That was the end of the freestyle. So I'm talking about, I mean, we did have the Black Boxes and the Heavy D and the Boys, and there was some things, but, hip hop definitely dominated.
Yeah. Went into grunge.
In grunge, there were two areas that were more acceptable.
Hard to DJ.
Yeah, very hard to DJ at that time. Yeah, but there was other things happening. There was house music, and there was other things that happened. But it was different. But out of all of it, though, I also do record production remixes. Yeah, without any of this journey, I never would have gotten to where I am now.
Right.
In the last few years, I've done a whole bunch of remixes for the Billboard panel. I had 6 #1 records in 2 years, and I had over 22 remixes done. And that's all because of technology, but most of all because of being exposed to music since 1977.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really how I moved what I do, because I love music and I wanted to take it as far as I could.
Right.
So
just pointing out about remixes and stuff. John behind him has some gold records and different things. He didn't buy those online.
No.
Those are real. So he's been in the industry and a part of this, and that's why I wanted to have you on. Just because
I appreciate it.
The history of knowing you was one thing, like I said, because before I really dove into the DJ world hard, I was a fan of yours, and like I said, I still have tapes in the house that say Metro Mix and then the date. What was the show called? Was it not? Was it? Well, I can remember what it was called. It was
the show.
Something
radio show.
Yeah, house party or
Metro Mix was the show.
No, but it was something else you tagged with that, like Doctor, because I know you always did that sample Doctor in the House.
John Hohman Productions, Metro Mix. It actually, in Pittsburgh, it was on WYDD first. Then it went to WAMO.
That's the one that I knew it from. Yeah.
Then it went to Mix Jams 100.7.
Right.
Then it went to, it's syndicated. I had 15 outside stations I did. But in the local market here, there was, after that was KISS. That's when you were more involved. And we were on 104.7 The Beat at the same time.
I forgot that I had done that. With you, there were nights that I was on.
That's right.
I know. I totally forgot about that, because to me, when I was there, because it was EDM music that I got to spin then, and I just loved it so much. I would get so lost in that, just being there with that crowd, because they loved to dance and stuff. I totally forgot that they had that. What's that little box that they always brought?
Oh yeah, that was to broadcast the digital signal. Yeah. But it's funny because Rock Jungle was another one of those times where the spurt where the music was. Ooh. It was cranking. That was pretty close. I mean, it was cranking. It was definitely going.
That club probably it held several thousand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember you having me spinning there even, and it was it was unreal to see a sea of people doing this, and that's literally what it looked like, a sea of people. So, good time.
The radio thing continues now. I'm on a station out in Sacramento called 105.9. It's Rhythm 105.9. It's an FM station, and then I'm on mix93.com Wednesdays at noon. Comes out of LA. So I'm still at it, still doing it, having fun.
Not one last question, because we can take questions because we're about the time, because I wanted to kind of have it be this long. Sure. But with all of this, I'm trying to think how I want to word this with the question, and you're talking about being on the radio and different things. Before we got on, we were talking about me retiring. And the fact that I don't see myself quitting. I just see, because I like to be busy, and what the life I've created right now with all of this between disc jockey news and DJing, I like to think of it as a life that I don't need to take a vacation from. I really do like to think about that. Some people, with COVID and all this stuff going on, they wanted to retire, and some people did retire. Some people cut way back or went to a day job. As you go down the road in the future, do you see yourself ever dropping out of the scene or changing, or what do you see? Do you have any dreams or goals or anything, or just forward as forward takes you?
Forward, yeah, it's forward and let it go where it shall. That's kind of where I'm at with it. And again, like I'm songwriting now with some people, and I'm like, hey, I'm pushing the envelope, and that's what I think you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years.
Yeah. We don't even know the next 10 months. So
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, but I definitely want to thank you for all the stuff that you've helped me with through the years. And like I said, that him and I were talking after I was at Las Vegas last year with John and all the guys, and how that I kind of looked at that a little bit differently than a lot of guys there who did. They were like filming every minute of it, and look at me, here I am. And to me, it was just, I was getting to DJ, and the next night I was literally at 4 a.m. flying back to Pittsburgh to DJ the next 3 nights. And I just tend to walk past things that maybe should be celebrated a little bit, because I'm okay. That was my creative thing. I want to do the next creative thing, and you do that too. But I was glad to hear you tonight talk and celebrate a little bit about that, because
Thank you.
You are one that's like you said.
Gosh.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, and I thank you for all that you've invested in my life.
Oh, you're welcome, and vice versa.
We do have a question in here. MJ, ask him what he's always wanted to do but has not gotten the chance to do yet. What have you always wanted to do and not gotten the chance to do yet?
I
honestly, while you're thinking about that,
I'll tell you one thing I'd like to do.
Okay.
Be a circuit DJ, like play in a circuit. That would be fun.
Oh, okay.
I've never done that. I mean, I've played in different places, different clubs, but never like big like show circuit.
Right.
Concert.
That would be cool.
That would be fun.
Very good.
Who knows? It may happen.
Hey, if that's the thing that I've kind of learned at this point, and that's, again, we were talking about it before the show, you don't know. You don't know where your path's going to take you.
That's right.
Howie, who is in our chat, great guy, has been in the business for years, has stories like you do, asked me one day, when did I know I wanted to be a DJ? And I said, I still don't know. I'm just here. It's a place where I'm at, and like I said, it's a good place. I've had day jobs that weren't good, and this one has me in a good spot. So I'm with you on all that. I don't know what mine would be, because I've gotten so many, again, through you, gotten so many opportunities to do, like when I spun at Rock Jungle, that was the pinnacle to me, because I loved going there as a person, and got the chance to spin there, was just, woo, love that. So,
a word I can give advice for anybody that's getting into this or is on the journey is to remember that you've got to love what you do, especially in music and DJing, in the music business, because we're in the music business. And first and foremost, if you got to figure that part out, that if this is what you really love, and why you're doing it is another big thing you got to think about. If you're doing it for the attention, that will wear out over time and you will disappear. But if you're doing it really for the love of the music, it will carry you a long, long way. So you got to keep that in your heart and try not to, be the biggest guy, slow and steady. And you'll eventually get to your goals. You got to be patient. It's a tough thing, but figure that out. It's very important.
Wow. Very cool. We got one more question. It was in there, and then we need to tap out.
Okay.
Is there anybody on your bucket list you would like to perform with that you haven't gotten the chance to? I mean, like I said, if you go to this man's house, you're seeing pictures with people he's met over the years. But I've always been impressed. Like, I walk around a corner, I'm like, wait, I've never seen this one. Like one time I was in his studio and he had this bag of coffee up there, and I'm like, why do you have a bag of coffee up there? And it was a promotion thing for Avicii's Wake Up.
Yeah,
and,
I have it right here.
Yeah, he has it right there. And I thought it was the strangest little thing that the people that he's gotten to cross paths with, and now that that he's Avicii's passed away, this is a really important thing because he was there for the release of it. There you go.
Yeah.
So is there anybody?
That's That's a good question. Alive or dead? I would really like to have done some work with Prince.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, he would have been somebody to sit in the corner and work with.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
With the future and holograms, maybe you'll get the chance.
Yeah.
So
maybe.
Yeah. So first off, thank you everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you. I was looking forward to the show so much. I decided not to do my mix show afterwards because I wanted to focus on this. I thought John would have some information you guys would really enjoy. So thank you for tuning in. We have lots of stuff going on. We also have the chill out room that goes on each and every single night. All you have to do is someone in the chat, throw it in there. It is DJNTV.com/chill, and it's a Zoom call, and you can just go in there and hang out. And we've even started filming a few of those. Thank you for putting that in there. And that's the way you can connect in this time where we can't really connect. You can connect with other DJs and just sit and talk about whatever. I like to think of it as a place to go, and I can talk geekly about equipment and stuff, and people around me won't look at me like I'm from outer space, Or some of you have wives or husbands, and you talk about computer stuff to them, and they're like, when is he going to stop? That's a place you can go and talk, and people will join in with you. So, John, if there's any place they want to find you, can they just search for Metro Mix or John Hohman? Or I know you're on Facebook as John Hohman. I think you have a Metro Mix page too, right? Yeah,
I have a Metro Mix page on YouTube. It's Metro Mix John Hohman. You can get all my remixes there.
That's right. Yeah, and a lot of them, trust me, they're good. They're not those crazy ones that have those drops in them that make it somewhat useless. They're good structured stuff. So yeah.
Thank you.
John, thank you for everything. Way beyond.
Thanks, everybody.
Interview. Thank you for this interview. And again, like I do at the end of every single show, got to remind you guys that as we go through things in life, it's difficult. And again, no one is going to be our savior, no matter who's elected or who's whatever. We have to be there for each other. And that's simply what it is. You don't have to go across the world. You just have to help those who are within arm reach of you. And that's it. That's all it's going to take, is us being there for each other. And this community with DJNTV, I'm so thankful getting to be a part of it so many years ago, because they've given me people out there who I now get to talk to online and different things that are friends of mine who I never would have crossed paths with. So thank you DJNTV and John Young for all that. Until next time, take care of yourselves. More importantly, take care of each other. God bless. Good night.
Good night.